seconds left. Eagles by 8. Brady lines them up. He's back again. He steps up. He's hit. He stumbles. He is throwing it deep for the end zone, and it is batted around and incomplete. And the game is over. The game is over. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Aloha and hello out there, everybody. What's going on? This is Miho from the Too Close to Call cast series, and this is the Road to Victory podcast.
On the road to victory. Oh, dude, I'm Pags, and I am getting that football juices flowing. I can't wait.
OTA's about to finish up. We're looking at mini camp, I believe, here in the not-so-distant future, and not a huge amount of storylines this week coming out of Eagles camp. However, we did want to speak with you guys about the 2 or 3 that have popped up on the radar recently. And first and foremost, I guess, Pags, the most recent news was that Darren Sproles came out and says that he's still open to playing in 2019 and is looking to finish his career the right way as opposed to last year where I think he missed 10 to 12 games with that hamstring injury.
Yeah, he's a tough decision there because you signed Spoles last year and forgo signing Blunt and other guys that could have helped you. But then down the stretch there, Sproles is one of your highest impact players out there. So if he's healthy, there's no doubt he can help your football team, but he's also getting really old.
Statistically, you're definitely correct. The offense was at its best when Sproles was back for the last month or so of the season, and the ability he gave them out of the backfield is one of the reasons why I think, because they have the money and the flexibility, that I would definitely be open to bringing him back at that $4 or $5 million mark, because you have Howard and Miles Sanders as your top 2, but that third running back, Corey Clement, yes, he's had some good years, but he's also had some bad years, and I would still put Darren Sproles ahead of him on the pass-catching, receiving ability depth chart. And if Corey Clement's your 4 and helping on special teams and things like that, I don't think that's an issue at all.
Corey's been there for 2 years. He had a really good year, and he had a really bad year. So you got to have that security, because there's no saying that Miles Sanders is going to take the league by storm like Kareem Hunt right away. So you really want to have that reliable back behind you, and Sproles can give you that. Sproles can give you 10 to 15 snaps a game, come out of the backfield and make a play or two. And even in the punt return game, Sproles, you can always put him back there when you need a big return.
Veteran presence who knows the offense. That's one thing that's being overlooked, is 2 completely new guys back there where they're trying to learn all new lingo and new responsibilities and things like that. And Darren's been there, done that. So I do think it's an option that we could see even past training camp, because at this point, a almost, I think, 40-year-old Sproles probably isn't trying to put in 2-a-days.
No, and nor should the coaches make him do that, because it's counterproductive when you get to that point when the guy's trying to keep his body healthy while still trying to learn the offense. Well, Sproles knows the offense. He's good to go.
He's good to go. And a couple other quick hitters. First, linebacker Brown from the Redskins made some wavelengths in the news discussing the Eagles locker room compared to the Redskins locker room and saying it was night and day different. And here in Philadelphia, it's one big clique and not several different little ones as it was in Washington. And yes, they're having fun on the sidelines, but while they're having fun, they're paying attention, they're understanding their responsibilities, and know once they get in there, they're going to be held to a high standard. And basically had nothing but good things to say about the locker room, which is a positive reinforcement considering some of the conversations that were had earlier in the offseason about Carson and not everybody liking him, and that potentially leading to a concern or two entering the year.
Do you think, now that that is all blown over and we've moved past it, we've seen Alshon with Carson and all these people coming out to Carson's charity event supporting Carson, is there any doubt in your mind that it wasn't Michael Bennett saying those things?
he could be a key contributor, but honestly, I think it may have been somebody who favored Nick Foles over Carson Wentz a little bit more. Maybe somebody like an Alshon Jeffrey who gets a little bit more touches that way and has some connections to the media where he could leak something and not get tattled on, so to speak. But when Foles was removed from the equation and now it's either Sudfeld or Wentz, it's clear as day that this is Wentz's operation. And I don't think the message of get on board or you're going to get out of here was sent, but I do think there was a passive-aggressive, probably tone at a meeting or two saying, hey, this is clearly our guy, whether it was, the position coaches to those position players saying, this is the deal. If Jeffrey, if you have a problem, you got to sit my man down and say, hey, you got to throw those 50-50 balls. I know you don't like it, but I fucking catch them, so you got to give me a shot. Like, you got to have those man-to-man combos because this is what we're doing.
Right. And I don't think I even told you this off of the podcast, so this is the first time you're hearing this.
Hey-yo.
Charity event last weekend. Anthony Pagliaro, my brother, goes to the event, gets into the drinking section because you can only drink at a certain section of this charity event, ends up meeting Carson Wentz, shaking hands, talking to him for a couple minutes, and got a photo and an autograph with the Eagles quarterback.
Well, we'll have to get him on the pod and see what he thinks, what they talked about. At the very least, get a copy of that picture and post it with this audio rolling over it. But that's awesome, man. Hopefully, rumor is, again, he's dropped about 10 pounds, so he looks slender and he looks locked in at these early OTAs. So the expectation should be near that MVP level, in my opinion, obviously, if he can stay healthy.
Well, yeah, you hear that report by, I can't remember the writer, but he said, this is the Wentz that we all remember. He's closer to the 17 Wentz than the 18 Wentz, and he looks thin and he looks good. And, man, I'm excited. The knee brace is off, and I can't wait to see him and his new toys pick apart defenses.
Let's hope, because talking about the offense and how they were scoring less than 20 points was not fun last year.
No, it was not.
Remaining with his charity event, a gentleman who was there who is not currently at Eagles practice was Malcolm Jenkins, obviously supporting his teammate, the charitable cause. You definitely think he's going to be there, and he was, to his credit, but he's outplayed his current contract with the Eagles, and there was a recent report saying that there is no end in sight for the Malcolm Jenkins saga. That can't make you feel good as we head into the first portion of mandatory offseason programs.
No, it doesn't make you feel good. You obviously want your team leader, and I know it's Wentz's team, but Malcolm Jenkins is the team leader. He's the heart and soul of the entire team, and it doesn't make you feel good going into these mandatories where he's probably not going to show up. I feel like if you're the Eagles, you see the productivity on this field. It hasn't decreased at all. And I know he's getting up in age, but you got to get this guy happy. You got to get him on the field. And you got to get this team ready to win another championship this year. And Malcolm Jenkins is a key factor in that.
I heard a quote echoing that fact. It was a beat writer who was talking to, I don't think it was Schwartz. It may have been the defensive backs coach. And his question was essentially, if Malcolm Jenkins were to get hurt or not be available, what type of adjustments would you guys need to make? And he said the coach looked at him and basically said, we would change the entire defense. The entire thing would be different. Like, there's nobody who we would be able to say, hey, go do what Malcolm does. We would have to change the entire scheme defensively. That just lets you know his importance, and I think you got to pay him. You have the space. I think it's a matter of the length of the contract that they're going back and forth on and the guaranteed money aspect of it, and that's stuff that Howie and Malcolm will be able to sit down and figure out.
Absolutely, man. He is the heart and soul, and I love the guy.
He is impressive. And one last question before we head out on this edition of Road to Victory is, all indications report that the Jets general manager's job is Joe Douglas's if he wants it. He interviewed these past couple weekends. Everybody's basically saying it's his as long as he says yes. And my question to you is, if you were Joe Douglas, would you take this Jets job?
It depends on what you as a person want to do. Do you want to rebuild a team that has been so bad for so long, or do you want to essentially not be the general manager, but be that guy that makes the football decisions, not the money decisions. Personally, it's hard for me to take out the fact that it's from the Eagles to the Jets, but if I had aspirations of being the guy, I probably would leave because everyone says it's Howie's team. No one says it's Joe Douglas's team. So in that aspect, yeah, I'd probably, but I don't know if I want to go to New York and deal with this media and then get run out of town in 3 years if you can't put together a Super Bowl quality team.
The internal debate that I think Joe is going through is, one, there's 32 teams in the National Football League, which means there's 32 general managers' jobs. They don't come open very often, and when they do, Pags, it's not typically because that team's performing well. Do you know what I'm saying? So any situation you're going to go into, kind of like any employment opportunity, is probably not the best situation you'll be walking into. Having said that, the cause for pause with the New York Jets is there's typically 3 determining factors with an NFL team that the general manager has his handprints all over. The first one is the head coaching position. And Adam Gase has already been chosen to lead that team and was picked this past offseason. So you're not going to move on from him after a year, maybe 2, just because that'll be a bad look and bad business, and now you're the Cleveland Browns. So that one's already been determined for you. Number 2 is the starting quarterback. Well, they just drafted Sam Darnold, who is their future. So that decision has already been made for the franchise. So Joe's not going to be able to come in and pick his quarterback. Okay, that leaves the third, which is the roster decisions and salary cap flexibility. Oh, you just signed Le'Veon Bell for 3 years, $60 million with $20 million apiece, so you're kind of tied up financially and flexibility, don't have a lot of options to retool that roster? Well, that decision's now taken from you. So what ultimately is this person going to do there that's going to be on the macro level to make wavelengths? There's no decision. The coach is there, the quarterback's there, and the roster is pretty much in place. So the only reason you would do it is literally to put on your resume that you were a general manager, knowing that in 2 to 3 years you're going to get fired and going back to what you're doing now, or you wait another year and you go to another spot where maybe 1 or 2 of the 3 available options are to you. I think he takes it because it's a general manager job, but if he would not, those are the reasons why.
If I'm the Eagles, I'm talking to Joe and be like, hey, Howie's the head of football operations. We can throw the general manager tag on your name. They don't have a general manager on their roster, so why not just give them the general manager name and continue course what they're doing now?
That gets tricky just because he knows responsibilities won't change, and I think everybody else amongst the league will as well. So I don't think ultimately it's going to improve his stock, and I think there's a little bit of animosity there. Not a ton, obviously. It hasn't hurt the operation, but the Eagles apparently blocked Joe Douglas from interviewing for the Houston Texans opportunity a year ago, and that obviously would have been a much better situation to go into than the New York Jets. So that's where I think the Eagles are playing that game of, yeah, sure, go to New York if you want. We'll see you again in 2 years, as opposed to the Texans where they're like, shit, they got Watson, Watt, the coach isn't bad. Like, he may stick there for a handful of years.
That's a good point right there. It's interesting, man. We'll see if we have Joe by the time training camp rolls around. But what we do know is we have a hell of a roster, and it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be fun to watch, and we'll keep you guys updated with the latest news and notes from Philadelphia Eagle land as we head into minicamp. But that's this week's episode of the Road to Victory podcast. We appreciate everybody listening. Please, please, please do us a favor. Go out there, follow us on Instagram, subscribe on iTunes, give us a 5-star review. We're up to 34 reviews, Pags. I don't know if you saw that, so we appreciate each and every one of you getting out there and clicking that button, and let's see if we can get to 50 here. Maybe by the end of June or July.
Yeah, let's get it before July. Come on, people. It's not that hard.
Before July 4th.
Instructions on Instagram.
Let's go. We'll show you how to do it. But as always, we appreciate you listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. I am Miho with my co-host Pags, and we're talking birds.
Go Birds.
Peace.
9 seconds left. Eagles by 8. Brady lines them up. He's back again. He steps on. He's hit. He stumbles. He is throwing it deep for the end zone, and it is batted around and incomplete. And the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.